Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to Symphony number 81. Whoa, because next we start with the popular ones, 82, the Paris symphonies. We're really hitting the major stuff. But that's not to say that 81 is not major stuff. It is. It's the last of three symphonies that Haydn composed for performance in Vienna. And oh my! Oh yes, what a wonderful work it is for performance in 1785, by the way. We're talking about the flourishing height of the classical era. We are in it now. And Haydn is taking full advantage of the language that he, more than anyone else, invented. Now, this symphony has some remarkable subtleties, which are going to necessitate playing extended excerpts. It's kind of an amazing piece. And what fascinates me about this last group of three, that is numbers 79, 80, and 81, is that the great Haydn scholar H.C. Robbins Landon spent very little time on them. He was sort of anxious to get onto the Paris symphonies, and he considered this whole period in Haydn's life where he had just tons and tons of work to do as an opera producer at the private opera house of Prince Esterhazy. Landon felt these were Haydn being entertaining but not terribly deep. And I totally disagree with that. And it's hard to totally disagree with H.C. Robbins Landon because he was brilliant and he knew more than anyone in the universe about Haydn and everything Haydnesque. But he was wrong. And this is one of those symphonies that really shows it. This symphony has some really extraordinary features and some wonderful half tints and expressive ambiguities and depths that are it's really special. You know, the last one, number 80, was just eccentric and funny. It was Haydn showing how outrageous he could be. This symphony is just the opposite. A lot of it's very subtle, but, no less affecting, maybe more so. I don't know. You'll have to listen to it and see for yourself. But like we heard in some previous symphonies, it begins with a motto, which, Haydn starts the symphony effectively twice. He introduces the opening theme, then he goes right back to the beginning and starts and takes off with it. So that we have, I want to get right to the music here because there's so much, it's amazing to just listen to. Here we have the motto idea. Let's hear it. Played very well, by the way, by the Austro-Hungarian Haydn Orchestra under Adam Fischer on Nimbus, or Brilliant Classics, or wherever you have it. And I have to thank them for giving me permission to use these extended examples because I wouldn't be able to talk about the music without them, to be honest with you. So here it is. Here's the motto. Now, the motto consists of two things. The first is a two-part idea. It opens up like a fan opening. It does this as the parts gradually increase the distance between them. But it begins with a delightful crunching dissonance because it's a unison that spreads out into like a second, then a third, then as they glide past each other, you hear some wonderful dissonance. And that idea, the idea of dissonance, of interesting harmony generated by a clashing of two simultaneous melodies or planes of melody, is going to characterize the whole symphony. I mean, that's the first main idea that you're going to hear over and over and over and over and over. Now, the second idea is a lyrical theme. Something like that. It's the idea is a lyrical curly cue. Ya da 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 da. It does that. It's sort of up and down idea in a lyrical vein. And that too is going to characterize at least some of the material of the symphony. And so from those two ideas, from a little acorns, mighty oak trees grow. So I'm going to play you the motto again. You got to hear it. You got to get this into your head. Listen to the way the opening two-part theme just sort of, they separate and sort of glide against each other. It's very slinky. It's beautiful and slinky. And then a lovely classical, lyrical, vocal type melody that has this rising and falling shape over and over again, like a little mountain range doing this, like that. Here it is again. So, that is the motto for the whole symphony. Now, when we have mottos in Haydn's way of thinking about them, remember, he thinks about music as musical objects, and the shape of an object doesn't mean that the tune has to be the same the next time you hear it, but the shape will be similar. You have to begin to think of music in terms of almost sculptural sense, that is, of musical forms and shapes and things like that, rather than quoting actual tunes, which Haydn very seldom does. Although he does something very similar in this symphony. It's fascinating. But we'll talk about that when we get to the finale. Oh, it's going to just give you such a thrill, I guarantee it. But now I'm going to play the entire movement, absent the exposition repeat and absent the motto, because you've heard the motto, and then it just goes back to the beginning and starts again. So we're going to start at that point, the second appearance of the opening motto, and then we're going to hear the whole thing. It's remarkable because it is continuously developmental, first of all. The idea of talking about like exposition, development, recapitulation, well, as usual with Haydn, the music has its own story to tell. It generates its own narrative, and you don't have to worry about the technicalities of sonata form that weren't even discussed or invented until like the 1880s. None of the classical composers knew anything about them. So pay attention to the exposition, and of course to the initial presentation of the themes, and then in the development section, the really interesting, weird harmonies that Haydn explores based largely on the opening idea of the motto. Because those sliding, slithery harmonies that clash gently and then pass on like two ships passing in the night after bumping into each other. It's really remarkable music and lovely and haunting, I think. I mean, it really is. But the recapitulation, what is nominally the recapitulation, the restatement of the opening section of the original material, just keeps on developing what we were listening to. It does present things in similar order, but it just gets more and more exciting and generates more and more tension and comes to a big climax. But then there's a coda, a delightful coda based on the lyrical part of the motto, da 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 da, that thing. You hear it over and over again. Da 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 da. It keeps doing that, and then it ends softly, which is very rare in Haydn and means something special. And what it means is that, well, in order to show you what it means, I have attached the opening of the second movement, which is a gorgeous theme and variations in Siciliano rhythm. Siciliano is, dum ba da dum ba ba bum ba ba bum da dum da dum. That's Siciliano rhythm, in case you were curious. But that movement, the main theme of the second movement, is based on the motto reversed. Because it's a theme and variations, there's a two-part theme. It's A, A, B, B, right? Is how you hear it. And the A section is based obviously on the shape of that lyrical part of the motto. And the B section is that gliding, dissonant two-part thing that we heard at the beginning of the motto, so it's reversed. And so I'm going to not even interrupt. I'm just going to let the first movement end, and immediately after a brief pause, slide into the main theme of the second movement. And you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. It's quite remarkable, and it's based on the motto. So get ready. We've got about 4.5, 5 minutes of music to play continuously. But I just think it's best to hear the whole thing and take it all in rather than dissect it in little pieces. So here you go. Isn't that beautiful? And I hope you've heard these similarities. I mean, that Haydn's exploring in such a wonderfully rich and subtle way. You know, he doesn't want to say, I got to play the same tune again. I can play a tune using similar shapes, similar ideas, that takes these concepts, that the two ideas that the motto tossed out, and reverse them. He's doing all of these things because subconsciously, whether you recognize it immediately or not, you hear it, you get it, and it's just amazing. So that's the first, really, in the beginning and second movement. But the second movement also, as in the first movement, where the development section explores a really strange harmony and it's very affecting and unusual, byways and highways and byways of the harmonic spectrum. The second movement does exactly the same thing in its minor key variation. There's a wonderful moment, a slithery chromatic meaning using notes foreign to the key that the music happens to be in, which makes everything somewhat unsettled. And here is that moment. It's shockingly dark and creepy, quite marvelous. And it's very similar to something that Mozart would be doing a lot of in his career. There's a lot of evidence that he knew this symphony well. And by the way, sort of paid homage to it later on. We'll get to that point in a moment as well. So here you go. Yeah, I mean, it's a real gripper, isn't it? It reaches out and grabs you like that. And then the final variation is just the most delightful thing you've ever heard in your life. It's a beautiful tune sung out by the strings and woodwinds with pizzicato accompanying, going pluck, 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 pluck. I'll let you play it for yourself. It's wonderful. So that's the second movement. You've got the motto built into it, and you have that harmonic shock that we heard in the development section of the first movement. So Haydn is true to form in this symphony. All of these movements are somehow related by similar ideas. The idea being the shape of the melody, the interestingness of the harmony, not necessarily literal repetition. The minuet. Oh, this is a cool minuet. The minuet begins with the opening of the motto, but it's as a minuet, you have a two-part theme, one on top, one on the bottom. It's as clear as could be. Jun, 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 and the bottom's going boom, 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 boom. The top's going da 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 da. So it's totally cool. And so that's all you got to know. I mean, it's based on that opening harmonic clash bit of the motto. And here is the full minuet all the way through. I love this minuet. It's so much fun to listen to. Here you go. Simple, straightforward, and adorable. So what about the harmonic shock, the strange harmony bit? Haydn saves that for the trio, the middle section. Now this middle section is a rustic pastoral episode. It's very similar to the trio that he would write for the Minuette of Symphony No. 88 a few years down the road. Actually, with its like little bagpipe drones and things like that. It's all there. But the really nifty part, and I have to play the whole trio to do it, is that when it comes back, the first part of the trio, because these trio sections are like the minuets. They're in A, B, B form. A repeated, B section, and the B goes back to A at the end. It's like a little middle thing, and then A comes back. So it's sort of A, B, A. Let's put it that way and make our lives easy. When A comes back the second time, not the first, the first time is a literal repeat of the original A section. It jumps into the minor key, shockingly, and that's where the trio ends, in darkness. And boy, is that a surprise! Wow, what a different cast it gives to the entire section. So here's the complete trio, and listen for the return of the A section, this time in a very exotic Hungarian sounding minor key. Here you go. So there you have two completely different implementations of the ideas in the motto. That close harmony, two-part theme thing, and then the harmonic shock thing. Well, actually, it's all the first part of the motto. Pardon me. I don't be crazy. Although you could argue that the trio section does the curly-cue thing from this. We could be talking about these things forever, and I don't want to get to a point where it sounds like everything is just related to everything else, because that's not really true. There's a lot of new material, original material, colorful material. Haydn isn't just repeating, and he's not coldly and intellectually like a science project mixing things up. I mean, he's expressing, and he's ferreting out all of the expressive nuances of the initial ideas of the symphony. So let's just be clear about that and let it go for now, because the finale is in monothematic sonata form, and the monotheme is da 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 da. That's the idea of it. Da 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 da. So it begins just like the motto theme began, with the two themes in parallel, sort of diverging and then opening up in a fan type way, except the top and bottom parts are the same idea. It's da 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 do 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 do, something like that. So they're quite similar. They're quite similar. And the second subject is the same thing, just with the repetitions of da 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 da, spaced out a little more. However, the development section is kind of amazing. It actually quotes the motion music, the transitional music from the first movement. And I've made an example that shows you exactly that. It is fascinating. You probably noticed that interesting motion music in the first movement when it went like that, and then the violins took off like that. It does that. We hear it again, modified, of course, because nothing in Haydn is a literal repetition, but it's clearly the same idea. And so here is the motion music from the first movement compared to its reappearance in the development section of the finale. Yeah, cool, huh? I mean, it really, I think, knits the symphony together. It just does an absolutely wonderful thing there. And I'm going to now play you the entire exposition of the finale, and you can listen to it. The development you're not going to hear because we just did that little bit. Just the exposition of the finale. It's absolutely wonderful, and it's all based on the motto. Yeah, of course. Here you go. And that, my friends, is an extraordinary symphony. Absolutely marvelous. And I really hope that you'll take some time and sit down with it and play it a few times, a few dozen times, because the more you listen to it, it's really one of those symphonies that the more you listen to it, the more you hear. There are all kinds of wonderful touches that Haydn brings out. Beautiful moments of scoring, like the pizzicato thing in the second movement, and the strange and interesting harmonies that you hear in the development section of the finale. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. I have one more example. I'm sorry. I knew I was forgetting something. I'm not editing this thing. I hate editing. You got to just do it, right? So here we have the development section of the finale. The development section is really important. Why is it so interesting? It was the one big surprise I was saving for you all. First of all, it does a lot of the weird harmony stuff that we heard in the development section of the first movement. So there's that, which is really important. In addition to just quoting that motion music, you'll hear that Haydn is having a very good time with his harmonic surprises. But the opening of the development section, I'm playing you the end of the exposition, the beginning of the development section. It's a big, giant, unison thing with a pause. You remember the tune is da 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 da. It's very nice and gracious. Well, here the whole orchestra blasts out da 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 da. Pause. And we know that Mozart knew this symphony because at exactly the same spot in the finale of his great G minor symphony number 40, the orchestra bursts out with a crazy dissonant unison theme. Da 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 dum ba dum bump ba dum bum 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 bum, and then it comes back in. And he got that from this moment. I'm telling you, he did. You can listen to the finale of Mozart's 40th Symphony. You'll see now Haydn's example is shorter, maybe a little punchier. Mozart's is more extended, even more harmonically daring than Haydn's is. But it's the same idea in the same spot. And I really have a feeling that, Mozart did get a lot from Haydn's symphonies. There's no question about that. He knew quite a few of them and conducted some of them and supposedly, so we know, and they were very close friends, and they were always sharing things. So it's not controversial, but I don't recall anybody pointing to that moment in the finale of Mozart's G minor symphony and suggesting that the inspiration for it might have come from this moment in Haydn's Symphony number 81. You can draw your own conclusions. And that is the final example. I had to have that. Oh, yeah. See, but there's so much to talk about in this symphony. And it's not long, and it's not complicated in the sense that it's not, there are no tricks. It's all just there for you to take in on the surface when you know it well. And that's the key. The key is knowing it well. And remember, Haydn would never, ever be sure that anybody would ever hear one of these pieces again after hearing them once. So it is amazing to me that he packs all of his music with enough stuff to justify that kind of repetition. I personally think that the concept was to put as much as he could into it with the theory that at least people will get some of it the first time around. And if there were other times, there's more to get, but there had to be enough so that the audience hearing it for the first time would have that feeling of completeness, of wholeness, of emotional fulfillment, of expressive depth. All of that had to manifest itself somehow on the first run through, and it does. But wow, how much more there is when we have the opportunity. We have to hear these things over and over. I often wish I could have asked Haydn. I said, if somebody had a recording, if somebody could take out one of your symphonies and just hear it any time they wanted for whatever reason, would you have written them the same way? I really wonder. We have no answer. But we're coming up to the Paris symphonies next. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Great stuff here. Take care.